I never thought a text message could rip my entire life apart, but that's exactly what happened on a rainy Tuesday in November. I was standing in my kitchen in Austin, Texas, wearing an oversized hoodie and no makeup, stirring a pot of tomato soup because I thought I was being a good wife. My husband, Jake, was supposed to be home an hour ago. He texted saying work ran late again. I didn't think much of it. Jake was a junior partner at a corporate law firm, and late nights were part of the deal, or so I believed. My name is Lauren. I'm 29 years old. I've been married to Jake for 4 years, together for 7. We met at a bar in downtown Austin. He was wearing a navy blue suit, fresh from a deposition, and he bought me a whiskey sour, even though I was drinking beer. He had this easy smile, like nothing in the world could ever go wrong. I fell for him hard. We bought a house in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard for the dog we always talked about getting. We never got the dog. Maybe that should have been a sign. That Tuesday started like any other. I went to my job as a marketing coordinator for a small tech firm. I answered emails. I sat through a Zoom call about quarterly projections. I ate a sad desk salad while scrolling through Instagram. Jake texted me around 3 asking what we should do for dinner. I said I'd make soup because the weather was turning cold. He said perfect. That word perfect stuck with me later. Perfect. Like he was already somewhere else. Like he was already lying. At 4:30, I left work and stopped at the grocery store. I bought fresh basil and a baguette and a bottle of red wine. I was excited for a quiet night. Jake and I hadn't been connecting much lately. He was always tired or on his phone or both. I thought soup and wine and maybe a movie might bring us back to something softer. I was trying so hard. That's the part that kills me the most. I was really trying. I got home at 5:15. I chopped onions and garlic. I let the soup simmer. I lit a candle on the kitchen island because I'm that kind of person. I like small, beautiful moments. At 6, I texted Jake asking when he'd be home. He said soon. At 6:30, I texted again. He said wrapping up. At 7:15, I poured myself a glass of wine and started to worry. Not the dramatic kind of worry, the quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest like a small cold stone. I checked his location. We shared locations because he traveled for depositions sometimes, and it made me feel safer. His phone pinged from an address I didn't recognize. Not his office, not the courthouse. A residential street about 15 minutes away. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he stopped to see a colleague. Maybe he was picking up takeout. But the stone in my chest got heavier. At 8 o'clock, my phone buzzed. I grabbed it, thinking it was Jake. It was a number I didn't recognize. The message said 4 words that detonated my marriage. Your husband is cheating. I stared at the screen for a full minute. My soup boiled over on the stove, and I didn't move. The burner made a hissing sound, and smoke rose from the pot, but I just stood there, frozen. Then another message came in. Same number. He's with her right now. 3421 Briar Hollow Lane, apartment 4B. I didn't know who sent the texts. I still don't. I've replayed that night 1,000 times trying to guess. A scorned mistress, maybe? A neighbor who recognized his car? A private investigator hired by someone else entirely? It doesn't matter. The truth was the truth, regardless of the messenger. I called Jake. He didn't answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I grabbed my keys and my jacket and left the soup on the stove. The candle was still burning. The wine glass was half full. My life was about to split into 2 versions, before that drive and after. I drove to Briar Hollow Lane like a ghost. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just moved. The GPS said 14 minutes. I made it in 9. The apartment complex was new and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a keypad at the gate. I parked on the street and walked through a gap in the fence. The rain had started again, light at first, then heavier. My hair got wet. My jacket soaked through. I didn't care. I found building 4. I found apartment 4B. There were lights on inside, and the blinds were half open. I could see shapes moving. A man's silhouette. A woman's longer hair. I stood outside that door for what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds. My hand shook as I raised it to knock, but I didn't knock. I turned the handle. It was unlocked. The door opened into a small living room with modern furniture and a big TV playing some crime show on mute. Clothes were scattered on the floor. A blazer I recognized as Jake's, a pair of heels, a red dress. And then I heard it. A laugh. Jake's laugh. That easy smile laugh that made me fall in love with him. He was laughing with her in the bedroom. I walked down the hallway. My sneakers made no sound on the hardwood. The bedroom door was cracked open. I pushed it wide, and there they were. Jake was sitting on the edge of the bed shirtless. His hands were on the waist of a woman who was standing between his legs. She was beautiful in an expensive, polished way. Long blonde hair, tan skin, a black lace bra, and matching underwear. Jake looked up and saw me. The color drained from his face like someone pulled a plug. He stood up so fast he nearly knocked her over. The woman turned and looked at me with zero shame, zero surprise, like she'd been expecting me all along. She crossed her arms and tilted her head like she was evaluating a piece of art she didn't particularly like. "Lauren," Jake's voice cracked, "it's not what you think." I laughed. I actually laughed. It was ugly and loud and it hurt my throat. "Not what I think? You're half naked with another woman in her apartment?"
What exactly am I supposed to think? The woman stepped forward. She was taller than me, sharper somehow. Her voice was low and calm and cruel. She said 5 words that changed everything. "He doesn't love you anymore." I looked at Jake. He didn't deny it. He just stood there with his mouth half open like a fish. I felt something inside me snap. Not break. Snap. Like a bone that bends too far and finally gives. "Who are you?" I asked the woman. She smiled. A cold, thin smile. "My name is Cassandra. Jake and I have been together for 8 months. He was going to leave you next week. We already picked out an apartment together. A better one." 8 months. 8 months of my life. 8 months of dinners alone. 8 months of him coming home late and kissing my forehead like he still meant it. 8 months of me thinking I was the problem, that I wasn't exciting enough or pretty enough or fun enough. And all along, he was building a whole other life with a woman named Cassandra, who wore black lace and said cruel things with a smile. I turned to Jake. I wanted him to say something. Anything. I wanted him to look at me with even a flicker of the man I married. But he just looked uncomfortable, like I was embarrassing him in front of his new girlfriend. And that's when the next thing happened. The thing I will never forget. Cassandra looked me up and down. She glanced at my wet hair, my no-makeup face, my hoodie that said Austin City Limits on it, and she said, "Oh, honey, you're kind of an embarrassment. Look at you. No wonder he needed someone better." Jake didn't defend me. He didn't tell her to stop. He just looked at the floor. That silence told me everything. I was nothing to him. I had been nothing for a long time. I left. I walked out of that apartment and down the stairs and into the rain. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just walked. When I got to my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a long time. The rain pounded on the roof. The windows fogged up. I thought about driving home to that empty house with the soup burned on the stove and the candle still burning and the wine going bad. I couldn't do it. Not yet. I called my best friend Chloe. She answered on the second ring. Chloe is the kind of friend who doesn't ask questions first. She just listens. I told her everything in a flat, monotone voice. Jake, Cassandra, 8 months, the embarrassment comment. Chloe said 2 words. "I'm coming." She showed up at my car 20 minutes later with a blanket and a bottle of tequila. She drove me to her apartment and put me in dry clothes and made me eat toast. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at her ceiling and replayed every moment of the last 4 years, looking for signs I missed. There were signs. Of course there were signs. The way he started guarding his phone. The way he got defensive when I asked about his day. The way intimacy between us went from once a week to once a month to never. I just didn't want to see them.
Because seeing them meant admitting my marriage was dying, and I wasn't ready to let go of the future I thought I'd built. The next morning, I went back to the house. Jake wasn't there. His toothbrush was gone. His laptop was gone. A few suits were missing from the closet. He'd already started moving out while I was at Chloe's. He left a note on the kitchen counter next to the cold pot of soup. It said, "I'm sorry." That's it. 2 words on a torn piece of notebook paper. No explanation, no apology that meant anything. Just, "I'm sorry." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then I took it out and smoothed it flat. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed proof that it really happened, that he was really gone. The days that followed were gray and slow. I took sick leave from work. I couldn't focus on quarterly projections when my whole life had collapsed. Chloe stayed with me most nights. She made me eat. She made me shower. She listened to me say the same things over and over. How could he? Why wasn't I enough? What did she have that I didn't? Chloe finally got tired of the spiral. She sat me down on my own couch, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Lauren, you need to stop asking what she has and start asking what he lacks. He's the broken one, not you." I wanted to believe her, but the embarrassment comment kept echoing in my head. "You're kind of an embarrassment." I started to believe maybe it was true. Maybe I was embarrassing. Maybe I let myself go. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough. Maybe I deserved to be replaced. I spent 2 weeks in that dark place. I didn't answer calls from his family. I didn't post on social media. I just existed, eating toast, watching bad TV, sleeping too much or not at all. And then my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Lauren Mitchell?" A woman's voice, professional, warm. "Yes." "This is Margaret Reed from Reed and Associates. I'm a private investigator. I've been hired to locate the biological daughter of Governor Richard Holloway. I believe that might be you." I thought it was a prank. I almost hung up, but Margaret Reed spoke with such calm authority that I stayed on the line. She explained that Governor Holloway had recently discovered through DNA testing that he fathered a child during a brief relationship in his 20s. The mother, my mother, had never told him. She passed away 3 years ago from cancer. And now the governor wanted to find me, to acknowledge me, to bring me into his life. I didn't believe her at first. I asked for proof. She emailed me documents, birth certificates, DNA reports, a handwritten letter from my mother that she'd left with a lawyer before she died. In the letter, my mother apologized for keeping the secret. She said she was young and scared, and the governor was just a law student at the time, with no money and no power yet. She didn't want to trap him. She didn't want to be a burden. So she raised me alone. She told me my father died in an accident. She lied to protect everyone. I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by those papers, and cried. Not from sadness, exactly, more from the shock of finding out that everything I knew about myself was wrong. My mother wasn't just a single mom who worked at a bank. She was a woman carrying a secret that weighed on her every single day. And my father wasn't a dead stranger. He was the governor of Texas, one of the most powerful men in the state. The next few weeks were a blur. I met with Governor Holloway in a private room at a hotel in downtown Austin. He was taller than he looked on TV, older, softer around the edges. He had my eyes. That was the first thing I noticed. He had my exact eyes. We sat across from each other, and he told me about his regret and his guilt and his desire to make things right. He didn't try to excuse himself. He just said, "I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know." And I believed him. We started meeting regularly. He introduced me to his wife, Eleanor. She was gracious but cautious. I couldn't blame her. I was proof of her husband's past mistake. But she tried. She really tried. She invited me to family dinners. She asked about my life. She treated me like a person, not a problem. And then the news broke. Someone leaked the story to the press. Suddenly, my face was everywhere. Long-lost daughter of Governor Holloway discovered after 3 decades. The tabloids had a field day. My coworkers saw my picture on CNN. My neighbors recognized me at the grocery store. It was overwhelming and invasive and strange. But part of me felt seen for the first time, like I mattered, like I wasn't invisible anymore. The governor's team scheduled a public announcement, a press conference at the state capitol.
I was terrified. I'm not a public person. I'm a marketing coordinator who wears hoodies and burns soup. But the governor asked me to stand beside him, and he called me his daughter in front of everyone. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and I stood there in a borrowed blazer, trying not to throw up. That night, my phone exploded. Hundreds of messages from people I hadn't talked to in years. Old classmates, distant cousins, a guy I dated in college who suddenly wanted to reconnect. I ignored most of them, but one message stood out. It was from an unknown number, and it said, "I saw you on TV. You looked beautiful. I'm sorry for everything. Can we talk?" It was Jake. I didn't respond. I deleted the message, but he didn't give up. He called Chloe. He called my work. He showed up at my house with flowers and tears and a speech he'd clearly rehearsed. He said he made the biggest mistake of his life. He said Cassandra meant nothing. He said he was scared and stupid and weak, and he wanted me back. I almost laughed in his face. Almost. But part of me, the broken part, the part that still remembered the whiskey sour and the navy blue suit, wanted to believe him. Wanted to go back to the quiet house with the backyard for the dog we never got. But I didn't, because I finally understood something. Jake didn't want me. He wanted the governor's daughter. He wanted the status and the connections and the access. He wanted to be married to someone important, not to Lauren, to the idea of Lauren. I told him to leave. He didn't. He came back the next day and the day after that. He sent long emails about how he'd changed. He sent screenshots of him blocking Cassandra's number. He sent photos of himself sitting alone in our old kitchen, looking sad and pathetic. Every message made me angrier, not at him, at myself, for ever loving someone so hollow. Then something unexpected happened. Cassandra reached out to me, not to apologize, not to explain. She sent me a single text message. It said, "You think you won, but you didn't. He still calls me. He still wants me. He's just using you for your new last name." I didn't know if she was telling the truth or trying to hurt me. Honestly, it didn't matter. Even if she was lying, the fact that he created a situation where that lie was even possible told me everything I needed to know. Jake was never going to be a good man. He was always going to be the man who cheated and lied and called his wife an embarrassment by letting someone else say it for him. I blocked Cassandra. I blocked Jake. I changed my number. I changed my locks. I filed for divorce. The papers were served to him at his office, which felt like a small but satisfying victory. He tried to fight it at first. He wanted alimony, he wanted the house, he wanted to make me pay for leaving him, even though he was the one who destroyed us. But Governor Holloway's lawyers were better than whatever lawyer Jake could afford. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. I kept the house, I kept the car. I kept my dignity. Barely. The months that followed were about learning who I was without Jake, without my mother, without the lies I'd been told my whole life. I started therapy. I started running. I started saying yes to things that scared me. I went to dinner parties with the governor and Eleanor. I met senators and congressmen and journalists. I learned to shake hands and smile for photos and make small talk about things I didn't care about. It was exhausting, but it was also freeing. Because for the first time, I wasn't someone's wife or someone's secret. I was just Lauren. And that was finally enough. One night, I was at a charity gala with the governor. I wore a red dress and heels, and I felt beautiful. Not because anyone told me I was, because I decided I was. I was standing near the bar when a man approached me. He was tall, with dark hair and kind eyes, and a smile that wasn't trying too hard. He introduced himself as David. He was a high school history teacher. He was at the gala because his sister worked for the governor's staff. He didn't know who I was.
He didn't recognize me from the news. He just thought I looked like someone who needed a glass of champagne and a conversation that didn't involve politics. We talked for an hour about books, about travel, about the best breakfast tacos in Austin. He didn't ask about my father or my divorce or my drama. He asked about me. What made me laugh? What made me cry? What I wanted for my life? I didn't have good answers for most of it, but he listened anyway. And when the night ended, he asked for my number. I gave it to him, not because I was ready for something serious, because I wanted to prove to myself that I could still trust someone, that Jake hadn't broken that part of me completely. David and I went on our first date a week later. We got tacos at a little truck on South Congress. We walked along the river. He told me about his fifth graders who thought he was both the best and worst teacher in the world. I told him about my mother and my childhood and the complicated mess of finding a famous father at almost 30 years old. He didn't flinch. He didn't look at me differently. He just held my hand and said, "That sounds really hard. I'm sorry you went through that alone." I cried in a taco truck parking lot. It wasn't pretty, but David didn't run. He handed me a napkin and waited. And that's when I knew he was different. Not because he was perfect, because he was present. He showed up. He stayed. We've been together for 8 months now.
It's slow and careful and sometimes scary. I still have nightmares about that night in Cassandra's apartment. I still flinch when Jake's name comes up in conversation. I still wonder if I'm embarrassing or not enough or too much. But those thoughts get quieter every day. And David gets louder. He shows up with coffee on bad mornings. He watches bad reality TV with me without complaining. He talks about the future like I'm in it, like I belong there. A few weeks ago, I got another text from an unknown number. I almost didn't open it, but I did. It was a screenshot of a social media post from Jake. He had a new girlfriend. She looked young. She looked tired. She looked like me 3 years ago. The caption said, "Finally found someone who actually loves me." I stared at the photo for a long time. I waited for the anger or the sadness or the old familiar ache, but none of it came. I just felt tired. Tired of him taking up space in my head. So I deleted the screenshot, I blocked the number, and I went back to watching TV with David and his terrible reality shows. The thing about betrayal is that it never really ends. It just becomes part of your story. A chapter you can't rip out no matter how hard you try. But you can stop reading it. You can close the book. You can write something new on the next page. That's what I'm doing, writing something new, one day at a time, one taco at a time, one small, quiet moment of happiness at a time. I still think about Cassandra calling me an embarrassment. I think about it more than I should, but I've reframed it now. She wasn't wrong about me being an embarrassment. She was wrong about why. I was an embarrassment to Jake because I was real, because I showed up, because I tried, because I burned soup and wore hoodies and loved someone who didn't deserve it. That's not something to be ashamed of. That's something to be proud of. And the governor's daughter thing, that's just a label. It opened doors, sure, but it didn't fix me. It didn't make me whole. Meeting my father gave me answers, but it didn't give me peace. Peace came from somewhere else. It came from the quiet mornings when I decided I deserved more. It came from the nights when I chose myself over the ghost of a marriage. It came from a history teacher who held my hand in a parking lot and didn't let go. I don't know what happens next. Maybe David and I stay together. Maybe we don't. Maybe I run for office someday. Maybe I quit marketing and open a little bookstore. Maybe I finally get that dog. The point is, the story isn't over. It just looks different now. And different is okay. Different is better than being stuck in a kitchen with a cold pot of soup and a lying husband and a future that was never really mine. So if you're reading this and you're in your own dark place right now, if you've been betrayed or abandoned or made to feel like an embarrassment, please know this.
You are not the sum of what people took from you. You are not the woman crying in the rain outside an apartment that isn't yours. You are not the note left on the counter or the silence when you needed someone to speak. You are the person who walks away. You are the person who survives. You are the person who burns soup and loves anyway. And that is the opposite of embarrassing. That is everything. I still have the note Jake loved me. I'm not sure why. Maybe as a reminder. Not of him, of who I was before I knew my worth. I keep it in a drawer with my mother's letter and a photo of me and the governor at the press conference. 3 pieces of paper that changed my life. 3 moments that broke me and rebuilt me into someone I actually like.
Tonight, David is making dinner at my place. He's a terrible cook. He burns everything. But he tries. And that's the point, isn't it? Trying, showing up, staying. I'm going to pour a glass of wine and light a candle and watch him burn grilled cheese sandwiches. And I won't think about Jake or Cassandra or the embarrassment comment. I'll just be here, in this moment, in this kitchen, in this life I chose for myself. And for the first time in a very long time, that feels like enough.